All right, AP World, get comfortable. We're going to spend a little bit of time here and work our way through the third of our three major trade routes in Unit 2. With our whole emphasis on networks of exchange, we've covered the Silk Roads, we've covered the Indian Ocean trade routes, and now on to the Trans-Saharan trade routes, which will make up Section 4. We'll cover this, and then we're going to kind of ease our way into looking at some of the the consequences and some of the innovating that comes out of this era of all of this increased trade that's going on in all of these different parts of, I guess, what we would call the known world at that time. All right, but let's get you going here on some trans-Saharan trade. First of all, some good little factoids to think about. This part of Africa is mainly what we're going to be focused on when we talk about this. And trans-Saharan means that most of these trade routes are going to stretch across the Sahara Desert. And when you look at that Sahara Desert, you can kind of try to, I don't know, to put it into perspective, the Sahara Desert is roughly more or less about the size of all of China. And being a desert as it is, only a very, very small percentage of all that territory you see there on that map is actually habitable. Most of it is just that it's desert, and it is it's bad news for human life. But it's going to be across this really difficult geography, terrain that we're going to see a pretty complex system of trade routes that are going to be established and then operating through our time period that we are still operating here in Unit 2. All right. Let's see, we'll pop up here. What's going to be key to this is going to be the rise of a number of African empires, especially in West Africa. That'll be kind of our main focus here. And the connections that they're going to end up making with mainly the Middle East, Arab traders, and as an extension of that, Muslim traders and merchants who are going to be establishing a lot of those trade routes across the Sahara. What's going to make that easier, and what's going to kind of basically facilitate this trade, is going to be some improvements. I don't know if I really want to call these technological changes because it's pretty basic kind of stuff, but the good old sand moose, aka the camel. This is going to be the pack animal, and basically, your 18-wheeler of this time period that's going to be hauling the freight back and forth across the Sahara Desert from West Africa to the Middle East and the other way. And this is an Arabian animal, and it's kind of its origins, and one that, because of its location in the Middle East, is well adapted to those desert-like conditions. And so, the perfect beast to be used as for these trade purposes that they're going to be using. We talked about saddles and the concept of the Mongols, who get a lot of credit for ideas of stirrups and helping to steer and that sort of thing. The Arabs will devise a very unique form of saddle to use with camels. That can be used partially, for people to ride on, but actually these are saddles that, kind of like you see the picture over there on the right, that are designed as basically so that these critters can bear a lot of weight. And so they come up with this saddle design that kind of evenly distributes a heavy load so that the camels can take them long distances without too many issues about, in terms of, breakdown of the animals and that sort of thing. The Arabs get some credit for that, and then Africans as well. The Somalis are given a lot of credit. Some of the Africans coming from the Somalia part of Africa, with helping to design this kind of weight bearing kind of a load setup that they have on these saddles. Okay. And then caravans. We talked about caravans, with the Silk Roads and basically how the Mongols guarded that and all that. Well, caravans are also going to be the system that's going to be used across the Sahara Desert, and it is part of that idea that in a real difficult environment, the more you can kind of keep all of the travelers together, probably going to give you your better odds of surviving. The Sahara Desert will, from time to time, offer up dangers in terms of, raiders and bandits and that sort of thing. But the greatest danger is just the environment itself. It is far more harsh. There are stretches of the Silk Roads that could be pretty challenging, just given the geography. But when you combine just the desert and the heat, lack of water, those sorts of things, in large part, that is why the camels become the animals, pack animals of choice, is because compared to, mules or horses or other kind of animals that could be potentially used that way, the camels have that ability to take on a lot of water and be able to conserve it for long distances, and that's going to help with the development of this caravan system that will be used every bit as much in the Trans-Saharan Desert as it is used in the Silk Road. So a little bit of a similarity there that you could focus in a bit. Okay. All right. Let's see. Talk about the Empire of Mali, and this is one that's going to play a large role. You can see it down there in the map, smack dab, west of Africa. And when it comes to the Trans-Saharan trade routes, this may be the most important African empire for you to be thinking about in terms of the origin of a lot of this trade and the demand for a lot of goods that are coming out of Mali, and then also just the rise of some of the leaders and the influence that they are going to have. And so we'll flip it on over here, and we'll talk a bit about that. Okay, Mali will become a major hub of Islam in Africa, and this part of Western Africa to this very day, that Islamic influence remains very strong. Gold is the big motivator back then, and Mali happens to be geography located in locations where there is plenty of gold to be readily had, to be mined. They talk about the gold fields of Mali and that sort of thing, but still, it was a labor intensive mineral to get hold of. But the Empire of Mali was very fortunate to have an abundance of it, and it doesn't seem to matter what time we look at and what people we look at. The demand for gold, that is something that never changes. We will see the growth of a number of major cities in Mali because of the profit that is going to be made from all of this trade. Probably the key city and one that's going to be able to grow mainly off of just kind of tax revenues from all the trade that's going on is the city of Timbuktu, which a lot of people always think is some made up kind of a place. It sounds like something from the movies, or some old romantic novel about Africa back in the day. No, really is a place, and really a place that kind of came to be very similar in some regards as Baghdad had been, or even Cordoba up in Spain, as kind of like a center of learning. And and again, wherever we see, with Darul Islam, and wherever we see Islam go, there is always that focus that, yeah, part of it is on the faith, but then there's always that focus as well on knowledge, and so you're going to see that, and part of what will give Timbuktu kind of its legendary status is the wealth that comes from trade, yes, but also because it is viewed as this hub, this kind of node of knowledge and learning. Okay, so it'll get you a little bit on there. Trade goods, again, there's gold. There's going to be some natural resources that come through there. Beads are going to be of value. Actually, they use the beads. They use kind of shells and and even some textiles, they kind of use them. They don't actually have a currency. They're not as advanced as maybe we see what's going on over in China. And so but they do work out a system where things like beads and shells end up with a currency value. And so they become kind of the agents of trade, and basically they have a whole system worked out where they'll be able to take this many beads for that much of whatever the trade good is that you're offering, that sort of thing. And so it's a system that will come to work quite well for both the Arab merchants that are coming in from the Middle East and the Africans, especially the people of Mali, who are involved in so much of this trade. A couple of Mali leaders that we want to be aware of and whose names pop up frequently in College Board world when it comes to AP World History. These are leaders who are given a lot of credit to kind of helping to expand the size of the state when we think of Mali, and expanding the role of the state in terms of the government itself, and creating kind of that base of central power in the Mali Empire in West Africa. One of them is Sundiata, whose nickname is no, not the Lion King like you see up there. Actually, he's going to become known as the Lion Prince. Yes, no Lion King, Lion Prince. And interesting story with the guy. I mean, he's born crippled. His family is all killed when he's young. He's kind of almost forced just to survive to become this warrior. But then over time, he kind of gathers together followers. It sounds like one of those kind of one of those great stories, but it's rooted all in fact, and ends up reclaiming the lands that had at one point belonged to his family. By 1235, he is becoming a leader in his his own right, and begins to basically establish a very, very strong central government, and really get Mali as far as an empire on the map. And will be really instrumental in establishing a lot of that trade with Arabs, with other parts of North Africa, and will also be there when Islam begins to kind of make its influence into Mali. He himself will never officially become a Muslim. He kind of sticks more to traditional and indigenous African faith, but he definitely will sometimes kind of, if it helps with trade, I'm not going to say he plays the Muslim, but he's definitely very, very sympathetic to the faith if it's going to help to facilitate more trade with those Muslim traders and merchants coming from the Middle East. So Sundiata, he is one, and a couple of decades after he dies, another leader of Mali, Mansa Musa, will come to power. He is known really because he is deeply, deeply connected to the Islamic faith. He accepts the Muslim faith as his own, and is going to be very influential in making the Muslim faith even more strongly spread through West Africa. Really more or less turns Mali into a kind of a Muslim empire at that point. At one point during his life, Mansa Musa will travel to Mecca. He will basically, one of those tenets, the five pillars of faith. He will travel to Mecca in pilgrimage, and uses a lot of the wealth from trade to build mosques, to build schools. That sort of thing, and all of it, pretty much is in tribute and honor to his faith. And as I said before, even after Mansa Musa moves on from history, the Muslim faith will continue strong. Matter of fact, the Songhay kingdom, which will rise in place when the Mali kingdom finally falls. Again, kingdoms, they rise, they fall, right? Empires, that sort of thing. And the Songhay kingdom will take its place, but it will maintain. There will be a lot of continuity between Mali and Songhai in terms of the trade and also in terms of the Muslim influence. That will continue to remain strong even in the Songhai Kingdom. Okay, and that will cover us on some of the bigger ideas that we want to keep connected to that Trans-Saharan trade. It will, over time, it will start to impact other areas of Africa, kind of going down into Nigeria and areas like that. But where we want to make our strongest connection to it is when we think just right, of West Africa, and especially just keeping that in our minds about the Empire of Mali and the role that it's going to play. Okay, all right, so section 5 here, we're going to shift it on over and we're going to take a look at, well, just like it says there, what are going to be some of the consequences of connectivity? And this connectivity we're talking about is trade connectivity, all right? And while at the very bottom of trade, yes, is always about making money. It's very much a, it's a financial transaction at the end of the day, but one of the things that we really want to make sure we understand, one of the things College Board will expect you to understand, that there's going to be a whole lot of other transfers that go on as a result of this. And so what starts as just, kind of a business deal is going to result in, like we have here, a lot of cultural transfers that are going to take place. Okay. So kind of break this down. And kind of little finer points here. So yeah, whether we're talking about religion, which we've been mentioning to a certain extent with most of our trade routes that we've talked about, maybe not so much with the Silk Roads, but Indian Ocean, Trans-Saharan for sure. Cultural, as these people from different parts of the world are, doing business with each other. It is just human nature that, they bring their culture with them. They bring their knowledge with them. They bring their technologies with them, and there's going to be, that exchange that goes on as people become curious about these, merchants that are coming from other parts of the world that they've never traveled to, and they're bringing, both the evidence of their way of life and then just their knowledge about their way of life. And people do, they go far beyond just the exchange of, trade goods and dollars and, or whatever the money is, or trade, they're also talking about these other elements as well. Okay. When we talk about the spread of religion, we can definitely focus in on here, and some of these kind of tie in with topics we've already talked about. And that is, Buddhism, Neo Confucianism, kind of neo meaning kind of a newer form of Confucianism that starts in China, but then it's going to make its way to Japan. It's going to make it down to Vietnam. It's going to shift its way up into Korea. So you're going to see some of that religious spread and some of that religious interaction. You're going to see Hinduism and Buddhism pretty much spreading, diffusing from India to Southeast Asia. You're going to find hotbeds of both Hinduism, Buddhism, and then a little bit of Islam that are going to end up in, Sri Lanka, Java, Cambodia, some of those sorts of areas. So, we have religious faiths are on the move in a real big way. And really, I should just say that, you can almost throw the big blanket over almost all these areas when we talk about the spread of Islam. Maybe not so much into, China, Korea, Japan, but heavy spread of Islam as we talk about Africa, West Africa, Northern Africa, and then on through, South Asia and into Southeast Asia. No getting around the major impact that you're going to see from that. Okay. When we talk about the science and tech, what are some things we can talk about here? A lot of that learning and that knowledge that is going to move along with trade goods from and to India, from China to China, from the Middle East. That's our ME, and from the Middle East. You're going to get some of those. Well, I guess I should back up. I'm getting ahead of myself here. When we talk about, and again, I know I'm revisiting some of these topics, but they're worth mentioning again. This is where, especially in the case of the Middle East, we get some of the, the Greek thinkers, and we get those translations, and then that knowledge moves on. Mathematical knowledge that comes from the Middle East, and heads to places like India. Medical know-how that is exchanged from place to place. So, again, very different areas of knowledge that are being moved about. Agriculture advances, especially coming from the Asian world. Hey, that's my chance, kids, just to remind you, champa rice. Don't forget it. Okay. That's going to be one of them. It's just some of it is going to be sometimes new knowledge about irrigation methods and things like that. But some of it is also as certain crops are developed and people work with figuring out kind of hardier breeds of certain types of crops. You're going to find that some trade is going to be in things like seeds. And that kind of a thing. So that gets in the mix as well. Technology, we can pretty much take everything from a little bit of everything from printing to seafaring. You've got things that tools we're going to be using for exploration. Tools we're going to be using later on for war. So we can get everything into lateen sails that are being used for just kind of making ship navigation and ships being able to be a little more easily steered in the directions they want to be. Rudders, the stern rudder, that sort of thing. The astrolabe that can be used in terms of navigation. The development of the cannon and improvements on that over time. We can talk about those kind of influences, and also again, all that know-how, all of that is being exchanged along with everything else that's going on. Okay, urbanization. When we talk about that, we're going to start to see more and more of this where major trade hubs. Where you're just those crossroad areas where there's a lot of trade networks that are kind of intersecting. You are going to see the rise of a lot of really big cities, really big urban areas that will, their power will come from their financial power. So I think there's places like Hangzhou in China. Novgorod in Russia will end up being one of these kind of commercial centers. And you're going to have that urbanization part playing its role in there. Okay, and we see kind of a rise and fall with that urbanization as well. Sometimes an area will be really hot for a bit, but then trade routes might kind of shift in a northerly, southerly direction. Go off somewhere else, and then those cities will kind of fall into decline. And then sometimes we're going to see some of those cities also impacted by warfare that goes on. Sometimes a key trade city will fall due to a conquest and not have the same importance that it had in the past. But urbanization, something that is going to continue to be an impactor going into the future. And then the Crusades. We've talked about this one as well, but the effect of the Crusades, while overall a major failure, you're gonna see that increase in the exchange of goods and interest in the Middle East coming from Europe. You're also going to have the downside that one of those effects of the Crusades, especially when we have the Mongols making their play at trying to conquer the Middle East, is the introduction of the plague that's going to come through. And the plague is going to do just a real number on some of these trade routes. Some of those major trade cities, like we've talked about already, like Kashgar, are going to end up being ravaged by the plague. But it's definitely, again, just that idea that the Crusades, both positive and negative, are going to have some major impacts, some effects on the trade networks. Let's see, from there, I'm going to shift gears from science and technology and talk about some of the people who were traveling and how they had an impact on these trade routes, and especially with generating just more interest in trade and in other parts of the world in general. All right, we'll talk about, first of all, Marco Polo. someday I'll have the time to get the stories about the roots of all of that. But I don't know where the game comes from. All I know is he's an Italian, and he ends up heading east and traveling some of these trade networks, but he's doing it literally as a traveler. He is a writer, and he ends up as far out east as China. He visits the court of Kublai Khan and goes back and goes back with these stories. I don't know. Some people say he wrote them. Some say people that he more or less kind of dictated them. Whichever way we want to go with it, we do know that that a lot of his stories, when they were first published in Europe, they weren't even believed. Some of the things that he comes back to write about. Just some of the opulence, of the court of the Yuan dynasty and those sorts of things. And so if nothing else, it definitely is going to spark a lot of curiosity. And some people are kind of like, I want to see it with my own eyes so I can believe it. But definitely his writings are going to spark that real interest in China, in East Asia. Okay. And a lot of his writing that he, what he is describing in China, a lot of it's the highly urbanized nature of China, these big cities that he visits, and the growing importance of commerce and business that in China is in so many ways far more advanced than what's going on over in Europe. All right, so that's the role of Marco Polo. All right, Ibn Battuta, who comes from northern Africa. All right, Morocco. You've got there. Is going to spend about 30 years traveling really all over, kind of from the Muslim world and Africa all the way to Europe and to Asia. A lot of his writings will be a little bit more religiously focused, and he will kind of everywhere he travels, everything kind of centers on he is Muslim himself, and so a lot of it really does center around his Muslim faith. But at the same time, he is also writing about these different locations, and over time, his writings likewise are going to be translated, are going to be distributed, and will spark their own interest and their own curiosity. And so that is Ibn Battuta. Okay, and then where's Marjorie? Marjorie, where are you? Marjorie, there. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm out of sequence. I was gonna say, wait a minute, I got to get Marjorie in there. I got to fix my PowerPoint, obviously. Marjorie Kemp is the outlier here. We talk about continuities and change. Here's a change for you, because notice, how can you not but notice that we seem to just talk about a whole lot of men, and Marjorie is very much the kind of the difference here. She is from England, and she is given the opportunity and the ability to travel. She ends up traveling throughout different parts of Europe and makes it all the way down to the Middle East. And she herself, because she's not afforded the same educational opportunities as men, isn't really able to write about her experiences, but she is able to dictate it. And so this will end up being written down eventually. She dictates her stories. They end up being published. She does it more in the form of like an autobiography, where with Polo and Battuta, it is sometimes more like observational kind of travel writing, if you want to think of it like that, the way we think of travel writing nowadays. But hers, yeah, it's very much from a woman's perspective, because she's talking about it all through her own eyes. And so very, very unique, especially given those times, holy cow, to get a woman's look at these different parts of the world as well, and sparking their own kind of their own interest and curiosity about these other places. So just remember with all of that, when we talk about the travel, it is those trade networks that gets these individuals wanting to hit the road themselves, not necessarily for trade, but just to kind of quench their own thirst, for in terms of their own curiosity, and then what they end up writing down, and then what ends up being distributed from there is going to create even more curiosity. All right. Okay, so section 6 that we have there, I guess I'll get a little bit of this here, and then I'll hit the brakes. Okay, so environmental consequences. Yes, there are agricultural effects of these exchange networks. Like I said, some of it is the exchange of technologies. Some of it is the exchange of different types of plants and crops that are going to move from place to place. So once again, I get to talk about champa rice. I think I'm getting down here toward the end. But other crops are going to end up making their way from place to place, whether we're talking about Africa or the Middle East, Asia, Europe. We're going to see bananas. We're going to see a crop that will grow in prominence over time, cotton. That's going to be a big one later on. Sugar and different kinds of citrus kind of fruits. These are going to be things that are going to be of high value. Spoilage is always going to be an issue with a lot of them, and you're talking about days before refrigeration and all that. So that's always going to play in there. But there's definitely the agricultural aspect of this. Okay, another consequence, not so positive. And that is going to be the environmental cost of these networks of exchange. And a couple examples that I can throw at you there is erosion, soil erosion, that we're going to see with some of the crops. And this, I'd say number 1 and number 2 are pretty tightly connected to each other, because in some parts of the world impacted by these trade networks, where they come up upon a crop that is, a cash crop that they're able to make a lot of money from, a lot of times they kind of throw caution to the wind, and it's just about, let's plant as much as we can so we can make as much as we can. And so a lot of times clear cutting land that ends up resulting in soil erosion, overgrazing land, whether it's different kinds of livestock, the use of really bad farming techniques, kind of like planting the same crop over and over and over again, year after year, and wearing out the soil. Those kinds of issues are all going to come into play. All right. And I think that's where I'm going to hold off. I'm at 30 minutes here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the brakes here. We'll talk about, Bubonic Plague and all that good stuff later on. I know we've already kind of introduced it, but we'll go into a little bit more detail and talk about the impacts of that. And by the time we get there, we'll be kind of doing a little bit of some comparison of our different our big 3 exchange routes here, and we'll be wrapping this thing up. So we are way on the downhill of Unit 2 already. By design. All right. You got this, and we'll catch the rest of it in class. Thanks, and see you around. Bye.